I wasn't exactly ready to be a medic, but all our training was field training, period. We didn't get any training in medics before we went over. We were trained after we were in England and then in France. We got our training firsthand, right on the spot. There was no advanced training as to what to do with a bullet hole or a shrapnel wound or anything else. We just had to do what we had to do. If a guy had a broken leg or a broken arm, or we had to do whatever we could to alleviate his problem and send him on to a field hospital. And at the beginning, there weren't many field hospitals. It was just plastic tents that we put up as a hospital.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. We are really excited for today's guest. This is a super cool opportunity for us. For those of you, many of you are tracking, we are going to Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day with the Best Defense Foundation. And they have a really cool mission. It's a charity that we've supported. Their founder, Donnie Edwards, who was just on last week, kind of spearheaded this cause, and they're taking a lot of these guys back to Normandy for the 80th. Many of these guys haven't been back in a really long time, and in some instances haven't been back since the war. They were 18, 19 years old, and they take these guys there and give them kind of a hero's welcome, and it's a really cool thing to be a part of. So we are proud to support it. Our D-Day shoe that we launched, 100% of profits up to $50K are getting donated to that. We have them on display if you're watching on video. But today's guest is a World War II vet. His name is Ben Miller, and we have these really cool baseball cards that I want to read Ben's bio from. I think you guys will appreciate it. So here we go. Joseph Ben Miller was born on January 14th, 1925 in Morristown, New Jersey. He was inducted into the Army on May 21st, 1943. Following his training in the U.S., Ben was assigned to the 307th Airborne Medical Company attached to the 82nd Airborne Division. On the evening of June 6, 1944, Ben and 13 fellow medics landed in Normandy via glider. Ben's glider lost both wings during the landing, but all 14 men in the glider made it out safely. He and his fellow medics went to help any infantrymen and paratroopers who were wounded. They arrived in the town of St. Mary-Église first, and it was the first town liberated. And as Ben said, there wasn't much left of it. Following Operation Market Garden in September 1944, Ben and his unit were taken to Holland to support the large airborne operation. During the Battle of the Bulge, he fought in the Ardennes. After the 82nd Airborne met up with Russian forces, Ben and his unit were sent to France via train, then shipped home to New York City. Ben was discharged from the Army on November 24th, 1944. Ben, it's a pleasure to have you, sir. Welcome to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Thank you.
Ben, I want to go back. I know it's been how old are you now, sir?
99.
99. All right, we're about to hit that century mark. How you feeling?
Well, not as good as I did when I was 21.
I hear that. Well, I'm 36, and I'm saying that too, Ben. So you and me both. Ben, I want to go back, for the listeners and try to paint the picture what kind of what was going on in the world and kind of just what you were feeling. Obviously, World War II was a pivotal moment in our history. And, when you entered the Army, walk us through what was going through your mind as a young buck getting ready to sign up and go to war.
Well, I didn't have any recollections that I can remember, except that I wasn't too happy to go into service, really happy. I got used to it after a while, but I could have been in a happier state, I guess.
And when you were in training, obviously you and all the guys knew that you were immediately going to war. And as I understand it, they trained you guys up pretty fast to deploy you. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. We trained basic training with guns, but then after we got over to England and was in the airborne, that we were not allowed to have guns. medics in those days were not able to carry a gun of any kind. So we had to just go with our shirt sleeves rolled up and just keep moving.
So you didn't even have a pistol with you in combat?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. We were allowed to have one.
And how did that make you feel, in combat?
Unsafe.
Yeah.
A little unsafe.
Just a little bit.
And Ben, did you choose? Was the medic route something you chose, or at that point in time was it just you got pushed one way or another into that?
Well, I wasn't exactly ready to be a medic, but all our training was field training, period. We didn't get any training in medics before we went over.
Okay.
We were trained after we were in England, and then in France. We got our training firsthand, right on the spot. There was no advanced training as to what to do with a bullet hole or a shrapnel wound or anything else. We just had to do what we had to do. If a guy had a broken leg or a broken arm, or we had to do whatever we could to alleviate his problem and send him on to a field hospital. And at the beginning, there weren't many field hospitals. It was just plastic tents that we put up as a hospital.
And Ben, when you got shipped to England, when did you guys become aware that we were planning the largest amphibious invasion in the history of the world? Did you guys become aware of Operation Overlord like months before it happened, or did they tell you wait, a couple weeks prior? Because I would imagine there's some operational security concerns about not telling too many people. So as you guys were training, did you know that you were doing this invasion? There's a reason you were in England, of course, right across the way there. But how aware were you of what was actually coming?
I'll tell you, I was totally blind. I didn't realize that we were headed for France. I didn't realize that at all. They didn't tell us.
When did they tell you? Was it the day before?
Yeah, when they put us in the gliders, they told us where we were going.
Okay, so what about the actual battle plan? Did the officer in charge brief you guys? Was it on the glider where you were kind of chalking up where you were going and what the objective was?
We had some officers that were minor grade, lieutenants and stuff like that, but we didn't have any significant officers. General Gavin was one of the big officers of the division at the time.
And when you became aware of what you guys were about to do, obviously a very dangerous mission with high casualty rates, and your glider was shot. Walk us through the emotions, if you can remember, what you were going through, processing all of that and what you're about to be doing.
When we got loaded in the gliders, I had no idea where we were going. It was all secret mission, supposedly.
From what you can remember, was it fear that you felt then? Was there any sort of excitement or kind of like curiosity, or was there a lot of fear just with how it seems you got really fast tracked into being in that position in the first place?
There was a lot of wonder by all of us as to what was going to happen. What we were going to go through. I mean, we didn't have any idea. They didn't explain to us what was going to happen. They just told us we were going in and we were going to land. The Germans knew all about it because they had telephone poles planted all over the landing, beach landings, so that we couldn't go in and land the glider in one piece. The gliders all got tore up on telephone poles trying to get in.
And was the landing itself, did you avoid any major injury, or were you pretty banged up just from the landing itself?
I didn't get injured going in. In fact, I was fortunate enough to come close a few times, but never got wounded the whole time. I went all the way to Berlin.
So, Ben, can you walk us through, I guess from the time you landed, and you kind of walk us through the next phase of the war for you, and if you could just paint the picture for the viewers
Well,
of what that was like. I mean, you guys were fighting with the fate of the world on the line, and obviously you
yeah.
had to establish that second front, and establish, the beach hold, and then of course all the way to Berlin, which you guys did. But to the extent you can remember, what can you tell us?
After we got established on the beaches at Normandy and into the town of St. Mary, they informed us, they loaded us up in jeeps and trucks, and they notified us we were going up to Holland. They had secured the beach all the way up, I guess, pretty much. And they told us we were going up to Nijmegen, that the British paratroopers were going to jump in to Holland, and we were going to be there to support them with medical aid. That was about all we knew. So when I got up to Nijmegen, I wound up in the town of Nijmegen.
Was there active fighting in that town by the time you got there, or had it been secured?
Well, there was no actual physical compact in the town, but we were told to stay away from all intersections in the town because the Germans were only 10, 12 miles beyond the town, and they were still shelling the town, and they were shelling intersections, hoping to get as many casualties as they could. That's all I know.
And as it pertains to the Operation Overlord and then Market Garden in Holland, were you seeing more casualties at Normandy, having to render care to guys, or was it still pretty intense in Holland?
Yeah, I think we saw just as many, if not more, because the Germans were in full force within range of our troops, and they were shelling and doing a lot of work that was going to require us to be help to them.
As a medic, obviously, you're unfortunately seeing the worst of it, having to care for people that have been wounded, and some of which ultimately perished. What was that like, trying to give medical aid to guys that have been sustained pretty major, potentially life-ending injuries?
It was not easy, because when you seen a guy that was all shot up, why, you tried to do as much as you could for him, but you had to depend on your field hospitals to do the rest. All you had to do was patch him up and keep him alive to get to the hospital.
Yeah, and I would imagine in some scenarios, Ben, you have to prioritize who gets care, right, and make hard decisions.
Yeah, you tried to do the work on the worst ones first.
Were there moments where there were too many that needed care that you couldn't get to?
Well, there probably were. I don't even remember, but there were probably a lot of them that we never got to.
Okay, so you guys went to Holland, and what came next after Holland?
Well, I don't remember the towns or where they were, but we wound up in the Battle of the Bulge finally after Holland.
And could you elaborate on that experience? I understand, obviously, it's a iconic battle in World War II and what had occurred, but sounds like frigid conditions. Guys didn't have the right equipment to stay warm.
They had one of the worst winters they'd had in that area in many years. We had foot and a half of snow that we had to dig our foxholes in and stuff. But it was a muddy mess, the Battle of the Bulge. Most of it was done in dirt roads and country roads, wasn't in major parts of the cities at all.
And as the Band of Brothers, series depicts, you guys were getting shelled like crazy from the Germans. Was that something you experienced?
Yeah, we experienced getting shelled quite often. There was a couple of nights where I had to spend underneath of a 2.5-ton truck to keep from getting hit. But we were lucky. They blew a lot of ammunition around us, but we never got hurt. The ones that was with me anyway. I don't remember all their names. All I had was one fella that I remember from Meadville, Missouri, I think he was from. And he wound up coming back, discharging, and reenlisted and went to South Vietnam. And then he died, oh, it must be about 10, 12 years ago that I know. And then I had another fella named Miller. I think his first name was Norman. He was a pretty good friend in our division. His name was Norman Miller, and he was from Massachusetts. I think the name of the town that he was from was Northeast Massachusetts. And he died about 7 or 8 years ago, too. So I don't have any remembrances of any of the other fellows that I was with. In fact, I don't even remember their names.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, Ben, is amongst such a chaotic and just intense event, did you find that there still was a human element to like building relationship and friendship while you were there, or were things just so crazy that was the last thing on your mind? Because shared suffering is something that bonds probably stronger than most things. Did you find that you were building a friendship and camaraderie with the individuals that were doing the work with you?
Well, I did have some camaraderie with some of the fellows that worked with me. 2 of them I just named for you, but I can't remember all their names. I just can't remember. We had a whole company, the 307th Medics, and for me to remember names is almost impossible.
Ben, do you remember, obviously after Battle of the Bulge, we started getting more momentum moving towards Berlin. Was there ever a point where as a soldier, you guys felt like we're going to win this damn thing? Maybe that was right in the beginning, but as far as the morale of the men, when do you think, guys really started to believe that, hey, we're going to march all the way to Berlin and we're going to...
I think it was more or less after the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.
I think that's when they all had the encouragement that they were going to win the war.
And was there chatter amongst the soldiers that almost like you had a target of getting to Berlin? I mean, obviously you're moving from the West. I would imagine the esprit de corps and the vibe among the unit had to be uplifting at that point. Now, obviously you still had a war to fight, but did you feel that was amongst your guys?
I think they all wanted to win the war. There's no doubt about it. Once they were up into the middle of Germany, they certainly felt that they were going to win it. And the Germans started giving up by the thousands. The German soldiers, a lot of them were only like our age, 18, 19 years old, Some of them were younger than that. I'm sure they felt that the war was over for them too, because they started giving up by the hundreds,
Yeah. And Ben, when you guys would capture the Germans, was it what you expected? I would imagine potentially, this is just a guess, but when you
we even did medical work on Germans that were wounded too.
Yeah. And did it make it more human when you got to see the enemy and realize that they're just humans, just like you guys are, and young kids? Was that hard to process when you realized, both sides are killing each other and maybe?
Yeah, it was hard to process it, but we knew we had to do it.
Yeah,
that's what we were there for. There wasn't much we could do about what our higher ups had in mind. We had to do what we had to do.
Absolutely. You guys did it courageously. What was it like when you got to Berlin? Was it triumphant? Was it what you expected? I would imagine that had to be a pretty surreal moment.
We had to deal with the crazy Russians. They were on one half of the city and we were on the other half.
What do you recall from that?
I recall that if you had a Mickey Mouse watch, you could sell it to the Russians for $200.
Yeah, that was a big souvenir, huh?
Yeah, that was with the Russians. That was great. Oh, Mickey Mouse watches, they loved them.
Well, I got a 3-year-old right now that's really big on Mickey Mouse, so maybe. What did you end up selling a Mickey Mouse watch yourself?
No, I don't think I did. I don't think I had one. If I did have one, it didn't take me long to get rid of it. I don't remember now. But,
So we achieved victory in Europe, and then soon thereafter, you were shipped back to New York City to close out your service.
It was about 3 months. I think we were in the Berlin area as occupation troops, and then eventually the Russians surrounded the city, and they wouldn't let us out of the city to go to France to the port or anything. So eventually I don't know what happened. Our officers had conferences with them, I guess, and they allowed us passage to get to French ports where we could get on a ship to go home.
You mentioned having obviously a newborn kid when you were gone, and I imagine that had to be very difficult. How often were you able to talk with your wife? Of course, it was only via letter. Were you writing letters weekly, monthly?
Didn't get a chance to do it weekly. Luckily, if you could write a letter once a month, you were moving around all the time, You didn't know what kind of a return address to give them.
So I'm guessing you were getting letters that were a couple months behind on your child, and by the time you got it, it had been a few months. And I think it's so interesting because our current armed services, we do deployments, and you kind of know generally when you're going to come home, and you can plan around that. And I think for what a lot of people don't realize is in World War II, it was like the perpetual deployment, right? You're coming home when the war is done, and no one knew when that was. And of course, you guys didn't either. So if you can imagine for our service members that are listening, what it would be like.
A couple of years before we finally got home.
Yeah, and for some even longer. That joined in 1941, and we're coming back in 45. There were guys that were gone for 4+ years away from their families, and it's just a very just epic thing, and obviously such a burden that you guys carried, for us with the fate of the world on the line. That man, it's humbling when you put it in perspective, and hopefully for many generations we can continue to recognize what you guys, the greatest generation, did for us. So we have the freedoms we have today. Tony, you got anything else?
No, I think we covered my questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and recall some of the stuff that we dug into. So yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for what you've done for us, and such a pleasure to have you on. And this whole podcast thing wasn't around when you were fighting the war, but this is a new thing. So Tony and I are proud to have you on, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Well, we close it out with Ben. Hopefully you enjoyed that. We wanted to do something a little different, and hopefully this offers some perspective on the sacrifices that those generations made. And I think what stands out to me, Tony, is the fact that he didn't even know the mission until they were in the glider. How wild is that? And I mean, to just not even know the plan. I mean, obviously, the background I'm used to, the level of planning and the level of detail is so insane. The fact that they're just all right, get in and we'll tell you when we're in the air is just so wild. And just how so many of these just normal people from all walks of life at a very young age were thrown into this. And I mean, of course he was a medic in quotes, but compared to the training he should have had, you know what I mean? There's nowhere near, what a real medic would be in today's kind of term. So to kind of throw those guys into battle, say, all right, you don't even get a pistol, and you just need to go try to fix everyone that's bleeding out or getting, sucking chest wounds and all these horrible things that they had to see, with probably very little idea on how to treat it, in chaotic scenario. I mean, it's just really wild to wrap your head around the fact that he had a newborn that he didn't see until was 1.5 or 2. I mean, we can relate to that. How wild would that be? And then not even be able to communicate. So just really humbling stuff. And if you like the Savage one and you want a cool, unique colorway that will support a cool cause, please head to the site and do that. And if you're new to the Savage one, have not tried it yet, highly encourage it because I think we nailed it. And again, this is our way of trying to support them. Of course, we are an apparel and shoe company, so that's what we do best. And we thought that was a good way to kind of show respect. On the back, it says 6/6/1944. On the other heel, it says 0630, which was the time that D-Day commenced for the amphibious portion of that. And then it says Operation Overlord on the back heel. And then if you look down at your shoes from the top, it says Damn Few. Kind of have that World War II Band of Brothers colorway vibe going on. So we're going to be having more guests, hopefully, in the programming. And kind of want to hear some different stories of these guys. And again, hopefully just to, from our perspective, provide some just perspective on what these guys did for us. And as it gets further and further in the rear view, I feel like we need to be obligated to never forget this. Our kids can't forget this. Their kids can't forget this, because so much was given in that moment. And it's really hard to wrap your head around it in current day, not to diminish any of the wars we fought recently, but when you compare from just a pure conflict standpoint, like it's not even close. The enormity of what was happening from 1941 and 1945 and what was at stake as well. For us, the wars we fought, our national security was at stake. It was the fate of the world. You had a regime that was trying to literally take over the whole world and instill, an ideology that if they had it their way would have taken over the whole world. That's wild to think about. That wasn't just a security. That was like, this is taking over the entire world as we know it. So again, not to diminish conflicts we fought more recently, but doesn't, World War II, there's nothing that beats that. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And thanks for supporting, when we do things like this. It's been cool to, over the years, like realize that we do have a platform here. And while of course, this is just a small, it's not small, but it's, of course, in the grand scheme of things, it's not this massive gesture. But for us to be able to kind of use what we've built here to give back to causes like this, but it's really through you guys and you guys getting fired up about it. We'll do the Veterans Day thing again this November, which we've done the last 3 years, where we'll donate 100% of profits again. So by you guys responding to this stuff, it allows us to actually do it because we know it will be received well because of the type of customers we've attracted. And that, to me, that's the coolest thing about what we're doing right now. It's like, all right, what else can we do? Thank you guys for continuing to support it. And that allows us to continue to leverage the platform we have to do good. So we appreciate it. We hope you have a good week, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.